I'm trying to remember exactly how. I don't think we start with total tuition less grants, like the Pell grants and this grant and that grant and the scholarships and the financial aid. I think instead and it may, but those things are pieces of our financial statement that somehow we show total revenues as either tuition less, the federal grant monies, and put that in different place. So we show the amount of financial aid on our financial statement. I've seen it. I just don't remember exactly, and I'm not privy to share it with you. Okay, so then number 8. To send a mailing, a private not-for-profit charity spends $100,000. The mailing solicits donations and provides educational and other information about the charity. Which of the following is true? And the answer is D. Under certain specified circumstances, the organization should, and they do, allocate a portion of the $100,000 to program service revenues. I don't know if you've ever gotten anything in the mail from the American Heart Association or the American Cancer Society or. But somewhere on there they'll give you, how to prevent a heart attack or 3 symptoms of a heart attack or something. By doing that in their mailing and not just asking you to give money, they consider that part of the mailing program because that is part of their education. And so it's kind of a game, kind of a science for organizations to figure out what percentage. And a lot of times it's either lines or square bits, bytes, square inches, square whatever, square millimeters, something. I mean, literally, they do it. As long as you do it consistently, So if you're going to put all that stuff in really big letters, then you probably don't want to do it by lines because you want to do it by space, right? But if all that's in little tiny font, then you probably do it by lines because you want it to count as program, not fundraising. Do you see that? Sounds a bit manipulative, but that's fact, and it's GAAP. It is GAAP. It's allowed. So just sending that out doesn't mean that all the cost of that goes to fundraising. I think that's important for you to know. Number 9, the financial reporting for private not-for-profit entities primarily focuses on, really, it's kind of like your CAFR was. It's the whole. It's like your government-wide kind of financial statements. So it's A, Apple, basic information for the organization as a whole. Number 10, on December 30th, 2015, Lee Museum, a not-for-profit entity, received a $7 million donation of Day Company common stock shares with donor stipulated requirements as follows. So this is an example of donor stipulated. So it's going to be temporarily restricted. I'm giving my answer away, but it's going to be temporarily restricted, part of it, until these restrictions are completed. The stipulations have been finalized. The museum is to sell shares valued at $5 million and use the proceeds to erect a public viewing building. So this person, somebody gave $7 million and said, here's what I want you to do. Take $5 million of these investments, sell them, and erect a building. So it's going to be temporarily restricted until you've erected that building. And then the museum is to retain shares valued at $2 million and use the dividends to support current operations. What do you call that? An endowment. Okay? So that 5%, that would be $100,000, is the ongoing operations of the building. That's kind of what happened to Hollis Gardens, Barnett Park. These were gifts, and they gave a chunk of money to spend to get it ready, but another chunk to maintain. Otherwise, then what? You're the risk of the city commissioners not supporting the Parks and Recreation Department to get in there and do it right. But no, there's a perpetual fund there. We talked about this, didn't we? In cemeteries and yeah. I know. When you talk about government and not-for-profit, there's always death all over the place. Sorry. It's one of those facts of life. So what is temporarily restricted would be the $5 million. Until when? The building's complete, right? So the $2 million is going to go in permanently. The $5 million in temporarily. When the building's done, transfer it to unrestricted to buy the building. Is that clear? Okay. Number 11, on December 25th, Mr. Jones gives Charity A 1,000 shares of stock he'd bought for $9,000. No restrictions were placed on the donation, and because of the board's policy, they were sold the next day for $28,000. How do they report these events on a statement of cash flows? Well, how much money came in? $28,000. So that's a cash inflow from an operating activity, which is CCAT. It's an operating activity. So A is wrong because it says from an investing activity. They didn't invest. It's an operating. It's a gift, a donation. And it's not the $9,000. We don't care how much he paid for that. We are the charity. We're accounting for the fair value of it. The $9,000 is irrelevant. So B and D are both wrong. Number 17, a private not-for-profit entity receives 2 gifts. The question is, what is reported for unrestricted net assets? So let's put that thinking cap on. One is $80,000. It's restricted for paying salaries of teachers who help children learn to read. Can you see how people would do this? They might have an initiative. Maybe they've got a friend who is illiterate, and they have a real burden for that, and so they give money for scholarships for an organization that teaches adults to read, a literacy type program. And so it's restricted to that. The other is $110,000, restricted for purchasing playground equipment. Both amounts are properly spent by the end of the year. And because the purchase of the equipment was made at the end of the year, the organization records no depreciation for this period. It's elected to view the equipment as having a time restriction. So what do they report for unrestricted? Because they didn't do depreciation, they're saying we didn't use it yet. It was done at the end of the year. It wasn't used yet. It is still temporarily restricted. However, the $80,000 was spent, and so that would be an increase in unrestricted of $80,000 for the donation and a decrease of $80,000 for salaries program expenses dash salary. The $80,000 is an expense. It is in the program area. Does that make sense? Okay. So it's A, apple. Number 25, a local citizen gives a not-for-profit entity a cash donation restricted for research activities. It should be recorded where? How many say A? How many say B? How many say C? How many say D? B was right. So here's the candy coming around again. I will. It's where am I, 25? Temporarily restricted. It's going to be restricted until the research happens. The stipulation is the research. It is restricted for research purposes. So it will be recorded as temporarily restricted when the money comes in. So you're saying it's not new research necessarily. No, it was specifically, I'm assuming that they are inferring that it's new research. It's not for research we did last year. It's not for research. And most of the time a donor is going to give money for new research when you think about it. That old research is already paid for. What I want is a new study, or I want more money to go into, Does that make sense? So that's a good question, but it is B-boy. I'm looking for others that are in 1, 2, 3. Number 32, a voluntary, we haven't gotten there yet. Well, that's okay. Voluntary health and welfare entity, which is a type of not-for-profit, produces a statement of functional expenses. Remember the functional? It's the program and the supporting, right? What is the purpose of the statement? I kind of just gave you that answer, didn't I? B-boy. It's so that you can have the totals for the program. Duh, Lynn. Okay. Yeah, sure. Go again. Number 33, a voluntary health and welfare entity has the following expenditures. How should they report them? So let's go one at a time. Research to cure disease, $60,000. Is that going to be program or support? That would be program. Support would be your fundraising and your office expenses. Okay? So fundraising. Well, the work to help the disabled people would be program. Administrative would be supporting. Okay. But you didn't know, right? And so I told you, now you know the rest of the story. Okay, I'm really, really not reading these before. Anyway. At least I know the answers. There you have it. Number 34, a voluntary health and welfare entity sends a mailing. We talked about this. So, including those who've donated in the past and others who've never donated, it has a total cost of $22,000. 80% included is educational. Remember we talked about that. Providing data about the entity's goals. Which of the following is true? And the answer is, you know the answer, that 80% of that cost is going to be program and the other is going to be supporting, right? And you find that answer in B. No. No. But they're saying B. Providing data about the entity's goals. But there's no call to action. So I stand corrected. It's not just the lines. You have to also, because what they're saying is you need to know these 3 alerts for the heart attack. You need to know the symptoms. The call to action is to read these and remember them. Here they're saying that educational in nature, all they're saying is this is what we do with your money, I guess. That's a fine line, isn't it? Yeah, but the education piece is not saying protect yourself or help us to not have, like the March of Dimes, help us to prevent premature babies, births or whatever. And the American Cancer Society, help us to, get a cancer screening and help cure cancer. Support, give us money so that we can spend your money for research. There's got to be a call. It's got to tell you to do something. It can't just say, we have an office in Lakeland and we have one in Winter Haven, which they wouldn't do anyway, but whatever. So they were stupid not to put something else in there with a call. The call doesn't have that much of a, it doesn't have to be the whole thing. Not all 80% has to be a call, but there has to be a call to action. that you can use some percentage of the $22,000 as program. No, a call to action has nothing to do with fundraising, not a call to give money, a call to stop premature births, a call to cure cancer, a call to help the unfortunate. Exactly. I know. We're splitting hairs, are we not? Yeah. So that's why we're doing these exercises. Okay. And really, some of you want to work for not-for-profits one day, and some of you will have clients that are not-for-profits one day. So you do need to remember these things, that they don't want to get caught. This year we're going to do a different type of mailing, and it's only going to have this and that. Well, make sure you've got a call to action. I'm a speaker in a couple of weeks, and I'll tell you why I'm the speaker, because they couldn't find anybody else. They kept sending me emails saying, you got any suggestions for a keynote speaker for the luncheon? And I'm like, well, have you asked this person? Have you done that? And finally, I got this one that said, will you just do it? Okay, so I'm like, playing F or G or H or something, which just meant we got to have somebody say something. But I decided that I needed a call to action, because they don't want me just to get up there and talk. Well, I don't think they really care. The officers don't care, but it would be not very good for the people at the luncheon if I didn't have a call to action. And it's an organization, and I'm simply going to tell them how our part of the organization fits in the whole and give them a history of the organization. There have been some questions about the leadership of the organization and how you get involved and that kind of thing. And then I have one thing called One Faculty's Path, and it's obviously my path because, hello, that's the only one I know. And, why I started with the organization and what I did and the leadership opportunities they've presented to me. And then my call to action is do one more thing next year. If this year all you did was attend, next year offer to be a moderator. If this year you attended and you submitted a paper, then next year be a discussant. Or if you've done all those things, then volunteer for a committee. If you've done all those things, then get on the board. And so a call to action. So whether it works or not, who knows? Okay. Let's see, anything else? No. Okay, so let's go back to the book, the outline. Here we are. Works of Art, Historical Treasures, page 827. Let's look there, please. This is important. It is a lot like what we had for governments, where we had works of art and historical treasures. And this happened in 1990. An exposure draft came out, and they issued the final statement in 1993 about works of art, historical treasures, and the like, and they are handled differently from other donated property. And again, disclosure but no formal recognition of these items. I'm on the middle of page 827, in the middle of a paragraph that begins this opposition. And the third line down says disclosure but no formal recognition of these items is required. So when somebody donates a statue or a painting, you do not have to record or disclose it if they're added to a collection for public exhibition. Doesn't this sound familiar? Education or research. Number 2, they're protected and preserved. And number 3, they're covered by a policy that anytime you sell one, you replace it for another piece in the collection. This is the same rules. But those rules were GASB. These rules are FASB. And it's really the same wording in both. And they came out about the same time. There is a subtle difference. And that is 2 more paragraphs down. A subtle difference between private not-for-profit accounting and that utilized for state and government units is here. The criteria for qualifying as a work of art or historical treasure are the same. However, the accounting choice for privates is between recording the support and the asset versus no reporting at all. So you can leave it completely off the books. Remember that the government, you didn't have to depreciate it. Okay? But you did have to record it when somebody gave it to you, and it was at fair market value on the date of the gift. So this one you don't even have to. I don't like that, and I'm not sure why they did that, because it would scare me, because then it may be that your fixed asset records might not even include these. Hopefully they do, because if they don't, somebody could steal it and nobody would know. Anyway, I mean, maybe they'd know. There'd be, the paint behind where the painting used to be, the wall's discolored. Maybe they notice it's missing, but you know what I'm saying? I don't really like that. And then the last paragraph of that section, then the question is depreciation. Private, not-for-profit entities are not required to record depreciation for those assets viewed as extraordinarily long, if the lives are extraordinarily long, because they have the technological and financial ability to preserve that item so that future generations can continue to view it. Okay. Contributions. Please know the journal entries on pages 8, 25, 26, 27, 28, and 29. Well, there's really 825, there's journal entries. 826, there's some journal entries. It's your inventory. 828 is donations. And then 829 continues the donations. I strongly encourage you to know all of those journal entries. Okay? Now, do you need to put it on your card? Only if you've got on your review sheet of whatever that you're going to do journal entries. What did I say? Do I have journal entries about? Anybody got that? For a hospital. A healthcare. So a hospital and health court, that's the only journal entries? Okay, then there you have it. Don't need to put them on your card. But those particular journal entries you need to know for the CPA exam. You need to know how to do this. I'm not going to hold you responsible for those, but you are going to be held responsible for them one day. So you might as well learn them now. All right. And donations except for works of art are at fair market value on the date of donation. Contributed services. So first of all, if you contribute your expertise to United Way, you're an accountant, and you do the bookkeeping, you do not get to take a deduction for something for which you did not have an economic cost. You say, but I could have used that time to make money, but you didn't. You were just a nice person. Because if you did, you'd have to record that as earned income. So when you donate your time, you don't take a deduction for it, okay? Even if it has value. Even if they would have paid somebody else to do the same work. They happen to have somebody that knows accounting, and that person volunteered. You don't have to claim that income, but you don't get a deduction. Okay? But what about the not-for-profit? What about the charity? What did they do? And those rules are on page something. Let's see. Oh, they begin on page 829. They can recognize, and there are two things here, they can recognize contributed services only if one of the two, it's not both. Number one is it creates or enhances a non-financial asset. Non-financial asset. And number two, and that would be, and they give you examples here. Examples are like labor by carpenters, electricians, masons. They're not creating a stock bond, mutual fund, okay? They're creating something with value that you could sell, whatever, okay? And so they will record if you had somebody in Campfire that wanted to come in and said, I will be the general contractor for this project that you're doing, and I will not charge you. You can call that a donation. You can quantify it because he or she does that regularly, and they can tell you how much they would normally get for that, and you can quantify that as a donation. Number 2, it requires a specialized skill possessed by the contributor that would typically need to be purchased if not donated. So when you as the accountant go in and do the accounting for free, the organization does get to call that a donation. But you don't get to take a deduction for it on your tax return. Are we clear? Good. Okay. And so they give you legal accounting services. So a lot of times you will be asked to be on a board because you have the accounting expertise. Lawyers get asked to be on the board because they have the legal expertise. Are you with me? A healthcare organization, they want doctors on their board to make sure that they're doing things the right way. Do you see what I'm saying? So whatever expertise is valued in that particular organization, for accountants and lawyers, it's every board. Every board wants accountants. Every board wants lawyers. But they don't need a bunch of them. They just need one. One of each. One and done. We're good. Okay. So that was important. Exchange transactions are reciprocal transfers. I give you this, you give me that. I'm on page 830. Many not-for-profit entities have regular charges. The local YMCA. Anybody a member of the Y? Nobody? Well, you've got the Florida Southern Gym if you wanted to use it. Like you really have time to use it right now. I know. Yeah, that's the funny thing, right? Or the pool or whatever. But those charges for classes and charges for dues. The YMCA is a not-for-profit organization. They have the same types of statements that we've seen in this chapter. So that the accounting for the dues and the fees are reciprocal transfers. You give me this, you can come to the Y. You pay for that class, you can come and take the class. Now, you don't come and take the class, you still paid for it, and we're not giving your money back just because you don't come. And that's the sad part about gyms is I'm going to pay the money so that I will go to the gym, and doggone it, they still don't go, right? Anybody know anybody like that? Not you. Of course, we would never be that way, right? And by the way, when you graduate, as an alumnus, you are allowed to use our gym. There are restricted hours for the alumni, but you can use the gym. Did you know that? Jordan knew that because do you still work in the gym? Yeah. So if you want details, you can ask Jordan. She knows the whole story, right? And it is restricted hours. The real busy hours are when you can't go. And a lot of the alumni that come are retirees. Have you noticed that? You didn't notice that? Oh, and you work there too. Okay, I just used to see you there. I don't go anywhere either. But I do walk my neighborhood, 4.4 miles in 70 minutes, and I try to do it at least 3 times a week and try to do it 5. They did not. What they did, there are two. And one of them they put in the field, and it faces the horizon. You can see for 20 miles or whatever on a clear day. The other one, people seem to be hitting it with the car. Cars, plural. Well, and they don't match. One's white and one is somewhat. You know where it is now? Yeah, go for it. And you'd have a fine and yeah. Speaking of cops showing up and there's always the rest of the story. Has anybody been following that doctor that was pulled off of United Airlines? Did you get the rest of the story? My husband's comment when he saw that, I'm so sick of watching that on TV. I could just spit. But he said when he saw that, he said, usually the story begins before the video. And the story was he had taken an $800 voucher not to fly on that flight. How many of you didn't hear this? He took the voucher, got off the airplane, took the voucher, and changed his mind. He had no legal right to be on the airplane. He changed his mind and wanted to cash the voucher back in and change his mind, but he had already accepted the voucher. Is that the first time you've heard that? Yeah. We heard it either last night or the night before. I'm like, it would not have even made the news. I don't think it would have even made the news. Right. I don't know. Let me give you a little piece of advice. When you're on an airplane, if someone in authority comes and tells you to get up and get off the airplane, do it. No. At the end of today, I'll give you my airplane story about that, because I have been involved. There was no blood, so it wasn't nearly as sensational. But I have been there and done that, and it wasn't me. Okay. So those of you who don't want to stay for the story, don't have to worry that Clements just about got pulled off like that man. So did not happen. Okay. Ma'am? Oh, thanks. You're doing good. Thank you.